Right, let's speak to Brendan Chilton now, who's a Labour councillor and CEO of Independent Business Network. He was, of course, the former chair of Labour Leave, one of those rare Brexity left-wingers. Brendan, it's great to have you on the programme. So, first of all, let's talk about what is going on with the OBR. Now, I think most political wonks know what it is, know what it's supposed to do. Most people in the public probably don't or don't particularly care. But what is remarkable about the stories around today is this sense that after giving the OBR, the Office for Budget Responsibility, a lot more independence, a lot more powers of scrutiny, a lot more power, the Labour Party now seem to be wanting stuff in return, and potentially they seem to be getting it. First of all, with what's rumoured to have happened is Rachel Reeves wants to change the rules on borrowing. She'll need the OBR's permission to deviate on that. And now with this report coming out that is suspected to say that, oh, well, you know, the Labour Party are in a difficult situation because the last government stuffed up our finances. Should we be asking questions about the OBR?
Well, good morning, Alex. I think, first of all, the Office of Budget Responsibility can obviously comment on what government spends, on what government borrowing is and government investment as well. The change in the fiscal rules, I think, is extremely sensible. And you've got people ranging from the International Monetary Fund right the way across to Thatcherite economists such as Patrick Minford saying that changing the fiscal rules are entirely sensible to allow the government to borrow to invest. Just as the public would. When you take out a mortgage and you buy a property, you don't look at that as a debt. It is a debt, but you don't look at it as a daily debt. It's a long-term investment because in the long run, the value of that property will go up and you'll get money on your return. And that's the same as what Rachel Reeves wants to do, but on public infrastructure and some public services. If you borrow money, for example, to build a bridge or expand a motorway, that is something that will have a long-term net gain for the national economy and so should be treated differently in accounting terms. Now, in terms of the former Chancellor, he never, of course, blamed the OBR for being biased when he was Chancellor and they were endorsing his policies. This is just Westminster politics stuff. I think one thing the OBR does need to do is to look at itself because it has consistently got forecasts wrong, and whether that was under a Conservative government and perhaps as well when we see their reaction to the budget under this government as well. I personally think politicians are elected to make decisions. They shouldn't be handed out to quangos and sub-bodies. The Chancellor of the Exchequer is going to determine the budget on Wednesday, and she must carry the can and also the credit for whatever happens in that budget.
So if Rachel Reeves has come up with this master plan of changing the way we borrow money to get us potentially another 50 billion quid, that sounds like a nice amount, and there was only a £22 billion black hole, why are we being told it's doom and gloom and actually there needs to be 35 billion that is achieved on extra taxation in the forthcoming budget?
Well, I think anyone that's got any engagement or experience with public services up and down this country realises they are creaking. You can't get a doctor's appointment. You can't get to see a GP. Waiting lists are through the roof. In schools, we know they are massively under-resourced. There's huge problems with social care. We've got all these problems in this country, and the only way we're going to mend those problems is by raising the money to do it. And so Rachel Reeves, I think, has, you know, the climate at the moment is rather doom and gloom, but it's because it's a rather doomy and gloomy country at the moment. I think every politician in the election campaign that took place a few months ago was saying nothing works, and I think that's the sentiment amongst the public. One thing that the Chancellor has said she will do is not increase business taxes any higher than they are at the moment. Of course, corporation tax was raised to its highest levels under the previous government, which has deterred investment, and we will have to wait to see what other measures are announced.
We are sort of understanding that employers' national insurance might be under the microscope for being increased. Surely that is essentially a business tax. Surely what happens when an employer has to spend more on tax on having staff, they're going to employ fewer staff. And we've already heard that we've got 2 million people off benefits, that we've got 2 million people who, if they were taken off benefits, would plug the £22 billion budget black hole. Surely going after businesses, especially small businesses, who are the ones who actually really bear the brunt when it comes to things like an increase in employers' national insurance, is not going to particularly help the employment market.
I think when Rachel Reeves was the shadow chancellor and the previous government looked at doing this, she remarked exactly those words you've just said, that this is, in essence, an extra cost on business. But unfortunately, we are in those straitened times at the moment where money does need to be raised. One thing the government has said, it was announced a few weeks ago by the Work and Pension Secretary, they are going to be clamping down on those on welfare and returning them to work. In terms of just returning back to business taxes, of course, we did have the very big investment summit last week where many, many billions were pledged to investment in this country, which will support business. The government have announced an industrial strategy. We need to wait and see how that will be supported in the budget tomorrow. Unfortunately, I'm not privy to the fine details of the budget, so I don't know what they will be. But I think if the government are making those tough decisions now at the start of this parliament, hopefully she will be able to build up that war chest, that public war chest, which she can then use to invest in infrastructure, invest in technology, and to possibly, as we move towards the end of the parliament, reduce taxes, which is something I think the public and business would like to see.
Yeah, I mean, Keir Starmer said he's going to be running at this. At one point, he was talking about having a 10-year term, a 10-year plan at least. It seems to me he might have changed his ambitions somewhat and want to get a lot done as soon as possible. Now, I just want to ask you as well about council taxes. My understanding is that what sort of caps or limitations might have been placed on local councils could also be lifted. And it reminds me of the King's speech, where one thing that Sir Keir Starmer said he was going to do is devolve more responsibilities down to local authorities and councils, and one wonders whether this is a way of offloading government spending somewhere else. And even if the government don't turn around and say, right, we're going to increase taxes, therefore we're looking after workers, that actually everybody is going to, come under the hammer if they have to pay more on council taxation.
Well, of course, council tax has been capped for the last 10 years, which has restricted local government's ability to raise revenue. And as a result, they've had to undertake all sorts of dodgy investments, which have led to some local authorities getting into real trouble. At the same time, the last government did pass extra responsibilities down to local government, but froze their ability to raise revenue. I think local councils should be able to set their rate of council tax. If you are a Democrat and believe in local devolution, that should be the case. Now, whether or not local councils will increase their council tax or not remains to be seen, and whether they're given that power tomorrow also remains to be seen.
I think it's fair to say it's a bit like university tuition fees, where you gave universities the option of increasing tuition fees. They all did. I think if you give local councils the option of increasing council taxes, they all will. Like you said, they've had to do some pretty interesting things financially, which have got them into some hot water. And given that they now probably have to fork out for even more asylum spaces in hotels and the like, I think, and they've got all these extra competences coming their way, I think we can all probably expect those bills to go up quite significantly. Brendan, I'm glad you sort of have a little bit more optimism than I do. I think we'd all, I suppose, in the long run, might say thank you if we can get a GP appointment, but these things could take a heck of a long time. A lot of money could be spent, and who knows when we will have the benefit of those returns. Brendan Chilton, the Labour councillor and CEO of the Independent Business Network.